Joining us from the government this morning, the Technology Minister, Chris Philp. Minister, great to have you on the programme this morning, but clearly these are very concerning times given the troop build-up around Ukraine. President Biden has warned Ukraine's president to prepare for impact. Are we really that close to conflict, in your opinion?
Well, we're deeply concerned. The build-up of Russian troops around the Ukrainian border has reached unprecedented levels. Military units from the far east of Russia have moved into that region, something that hasn't happened for many, many years previously. So I think it is a very serious situation. I think President Biden and our Prime Minister are right to warn President Putin that the consequences, if they do invade Ukraine, will be very, very serious indeed for Russia in terms of sanctions. The Americans made clear yesterday that the Nord Stream 2 pipe would not happen if they invade. In the United Kingdom, we're doing everything we can to support the Ukrainians, including supplying military equipment that would help them, and training as well that goes with that would help them prevent Russian tanks from entering Ukrainian territory. So I think we are urging Russia to get to the table, to discuss issues that are relevant and to de-escalate this situation, which will ultimately, de-escalation is clearly in the interests of all concerned. It is not too late to de-escalate, and that is what now needs to happen.
Yeah, we will certainly see over the coming days and weeks the tone struck by Vladimir Putin. I do, however, want to move on to more domestic matters, Minister, given that we have you on the programme this morning. And national insurance. In various interviews this week, ministers from the Cabinet down have all insisted that planned increase come April is going to go ahead. Yesterday, the Prime Minister didn't confirm it. I'm just wondering, what is your understanding of the situation right now? Is that national insurance rise in April set in stone?
Yes, it is going ahead. It was approved by the whole Cabinet. It was passed by Parliament with a significant majority, and the money is needed to fund the NHS, which is something I think that is a national priority. It's £36 billion over 3 years to fund the NHS and social care. We need to put that money in to make sure the NHS has the resources it needs to recover after the pandemic, and this is a proportionate way of finding that money.
We are, of course, though, all of this has to be considered against the backdrop of rising energy prices, that energy price cap coming out in, just over a week's time. When are we going to hear more from the government in this? And your colleague, James Heapy, speaking on television last night, said the government is in listening mode in all of this. When are we going to hear more from the government about the financial assistance that may be made available as we head into some very, very expensive times?
Yeah. Just on the national insurance point, it's worth keeping in mind that the 6.5 million people on the lowest incomes won't pay a single extra penny as a result of that, and half of the extra money paid will be paid by the 14% of top earners. So it's just worth keeping that in mind. On your broader question about cost of living, yes, the government absolutely is in listening mode about the general broader cost of living issues. There are lots of measures in place already to help address that. I mean, the cost of living issue, by the way, is clearly a global issue. Inflation in America is higher than it is here. It's higher in Germany than it is here as well. It's a global phenomenon, but we do need to take action. So, for example, there is already a big increase in the minimum wage planned for April. It's going up to £9.50 an hour, an increase that is well above the rate of inflation. We've already announced that the universal credit taper is being extended, which will put an extra £1,000 a year into the pockets of families on lower income. And there are a huge number of interventions happening on energy prices. So, for example, there's the things like the winter fuel allowance we've had for many years. There's also a £500 million fund established already to help people on lower incomes with their fuel bills. But I suspect there will be even more done in the coming weeks and months, but in a targeted way, to make sure people who need some assistance with things like fuel bills can get that. But a lot has been done already.
I wonder if we can turn our attention to Afghanistan. You may well have heard us reporting the fact that the Foreign Office is giving an additional £100 million aid, which I'm sure those in Afghanistan will be crying out for. But yesterday, the accusation was made that the Prime Minister was ultimately responsible for signing off on the repatriation of animals over Afghans. He described that allegation yesterday as total rhubarb. What on earth did he mean by that?
Well, I think he meant that the allegation was not true. I think that's what he meant when he said.
Well, why didn't he say that?
The Prime Minister wasn't involved in. Well, I think he wasn't involved in making individual decisions. And we should also be clear, by the way, that the plane which those people and animals came out on was not a plane that was commissioned or chartered by the UK government. It was done privately by donors. But I think the Prime Minister's made his position on this very clear. It wasn't something that he was personally involved in. And we should, by the way, we should also, as a country,
I want to focus on the language, because I keep hearing that the Prime Minister is gifted in its use. I'm just wondering whether or not you think describing it as total rhubarb is respectful to the Afghan interpreters that we left behind, some of whom are now dead.
Well, I think what we should be clear about in terms of the Afghan situation is that last August, in that emergency situation, the United Kingdom evacuated far more people from Afghanistan than any other European country. We did it in very short order. We provided troops on the ground to protect that airbase in Kabul. So I think we can be extremely proud of what we did in Afghanistan. And now we're running a programme over a 5-year period that will see more at-risk Afghan civilians, including or particularly women and girls, resettled into the UK in large 20,000 people. That is more than any other European country. So the fact the United Kingdom has helped and will help more Afghans than any other European country is something we can be enormously proud of.
Yeah, I understand that, but despite the fact that we have emails from the Foreign Office, letters from Boris Johnson's then PPS, the Prime Minister describes the allegation that he authorised this as total rhubarb. I'll repeat that. So if the Prime Minister didn't authorise it, who did?
Well, the Prime Minister wasn't involved in making operational decisions. The plane, as I said, was actually chartered privately. In terms of the operational decision-making about who had access to the airstrip, the airfield, and who got into the perimeter of it, I mean, those would have been operational decisions. I don't know exactly which person would have been controlling that on a day-to-day basis.
Which department, then?
The Prime Minister's been clear.
The Foreign Office, the Ministry of Defence?
Well, they were working on that together, both of those departments. But let me just be clear again. The United Kingdom evacuated more people from Afghanistan in August than any other European country, and we can be extremely proud of that.
I understand that, but if the Prime Minister is telling us, despite the evidence that we can all see with our own eyes, where he is named in an email from the Foreign Office as having authorised this, if he didn't authorise it, who did? I think it's a fairly significant question.
Well, I've explained already that those operational decisions about on the ground were being taken by teams working in the Foreign Office. Operationally, the Ministry of Defence obviously were in control with the Americans of Kabul airport. The Prime Minister's been clear that it wasn't the decision he was involved in. I think whoever wrote that email, it was obviously a sort of second or third hand account. Clearly it was mistaken. And as I say, the efforts we made in Afghanistan in August and that we're making now and over the next few years are leading Europe. And that is something we should be proud of.
Sure. Minister, I suppose the broader point in all of this is that there are legitimate concerns about the Prime Minister's capacity for telling the truth at the moment, of his moral probity. In fact, you yourself were openly mocked by the audience on BBC's Any Questions when the host asked you if Boris Johnson was a beacon of moral integrity. I mean, do you stand by that? Do you honestly believe Mr Johnson to be a beacon of moral integrity?
Yeah, yes, I do. And he's someone who is working night and day and has been since he became Prime Minister 2.5 years ago. He's delivered Brexit, which obviously people thought was difficult or impossible. He did that. He won a landslide general election victory. We've since been hit by COVID, and he and his team have been working night and day to get us through this pandemic, as a result of which we've had a European leading booster programme. We've got more payroll jobs now, 400,000 more than before the pandemic. Youth unemployment at a record low. The IMF came out this week forecasting that we would have the highest growth in this country of any G7 economy. None of that is an accident. It's happened as a result of enormous amounts of hard work that have been led by the Prime Minister. And I think the results speak louder than words, and the results the Prime Minister has delivered for this country in extraordinarily difficult circumstances are something that he and his team, the government, and frankly all of us can be proud of.
Just finally, and very, very briefly, I do need to let you go. As of this moment, as of 7:15 on a Friday morning, the Sue Gray report has not yet been handed to Downing Street. Is that your understanding?
Well, I spoke to someone in Downing Street about half an hour ago, and they certainly didn't indicate that it had been received. So, I don't know a lot more than you do, but I've certainly got no information as of right now that it's been received. No.
Mr Philp, thanks very much for joining us this morning. Appreciate it.